Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar where we'll be discussing what's in your maintenance toolbox, the hidden secret to your NOI. My name is Linda Snell, and I am the Resource Director for the National Apartment Association. And I want to welcome all of our members in attendance and thank you for joining us for this important topic. Before we get started, I want to go over a few announcements. This presentation is being recorded and will be posted on our website and YouTube channel next week. During the discussion, please feel free to type in any questions into the Q&A or chat box on your screen, and we will share them with our speaker. And now I will turn the microphone over to Chris Ulip, who is the Vice President of Yardi Breeze, who is the exclusive 2021 Independent Rental Owner Committee sponsor. Chris will introduce today's outstanding speaker. Chris?
Thank you, Linda. Yardi Breeze is proud to be a supporter of NAA's Independent Rental Owner members. We welcome you to this webinar and hope you enjoy it. It's a pleasure to introduce Stephanie Anderson, Senior Director at Grace Hill. Stephanie, with 15 years of property management experience, brings a wealth of knowledge, specializing in revenue management, creative marketing, and employee development. She will motivate you to greater success and disrupt status quo with out-of-the-box ideas and trends. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Chris, for that great introduction, and welcome everyone. I am thrilled to be here today for a short micro webinar where we are going to cover a lot of information in such a short period of time. So I'm going to get my timer started so we don't go over and get ready to have some fun. What's in your maintenance toolbox? Well, I'm sure you've probably asked yourself that question before, or maybe to one of your team members. Today, specifically, we're going to talk about that maintenance toolbox because it is the hidden secret to your NOI. So let's dive in. Specifically, the first thing that we're going to talk about, and we're going to go over this fairly quickly, is we're going to talk about 5 maintenance fixes to unlock hidden revenue and drive NOI. Some of these are things that you're going to be able to implement pretty easily in your company, and others, it's going to be a little bit of a thought process and planning for you to do. So part of my presentation today is to help you think outside of the box with these ideas and start to give you the beginning basis for how you should move forward with these ideas and suggestions. So the first one we're going to talk about today is we need to have a procurement strategy in place. If you're here with me today, let me know in that chat box if you currently have a procurement policy or strategy in place. So something that you're either currently implementing or something that you are planning to implement in the near future. Focusing first on the following core elements in order to see the biggest impact on NOI. Because, with procurement, there is a very big picture here, and there's a lot of minute details that can be involved in it. So for today's purposes, we're going to talk about just these 4 items below for procurement. We're going to control hard cost. We're going to standardize products across the portfolio. We're going to negotiate pricing because everything in life is negotiable. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the need for timely payments. So if you have a procurement strategy in place, which, this is pretty common. And Lisa, thank you so much for letting me know that you have one in place. It is pretty common to have it in place if you are a larger management or ownership company. When we talk about some of our independent rental owners or smaller companies, it can get a little bit tricky to put this into place. Oftentimes we find that is the, juice worth the squeeze. Is it important to put this strategy in place if we only have a small portfolio or maybe just one property, 200 units or less, for example? The ending result here is yes, it's still important to have it. Now, you may be using a platform system for your procurement strategy. That's a place where you may be putting your suppliers and vendors in that system, doing the liability and insurance stand of that, making sure payments are made in a timely fashion, and even having a catalog for ordering, especially for your maintenance supplies. But I'll tell you, even if you don't have that platform in place, think about your procurement strategy. Think about how you can just start to standardize products. The first thing that I tell people to do is think about carpet. Why carpet? Because it's the easiest to talk about in terms of confusion to standardize it. When I was on site for many, many years, it's easy for us to think about carpet installation and what's the lowest price. Well, oftentimes we don't get too caught up in the amount of ounces the carpet is, the longevity of the carpet. We just know that we need carpet to fit within our budget and to be installed within a very tight time frame. We don't necessarily think outside of that. Of course, color is always, something we want to think about too. But in terms of the quality that we're getting, and if we have to pay more money for that, are we getting more longevity, which in the end affects our bottom line NOI? So really, really good thing to think about. Of course, we could go way deeper into that. But at the end of the day, when you standardize your products, it's probably the first thing that you want to do to really start to control those hard costs. Negotiate pricing on your contracts. Use the opportunity to partner with NAA using NAA supplier partners. And that's a great opportunity for you to get great pricing as being a member of NAA. All right, so let's dive into number 2 here. It's all about the pre-move out inspections. I was asked many, many years ago what kind of something I would do on site that was not as highly implemented as I thought it should be. And here we are many, many years later. And the same is still true when I talk to many companies, and it's pre-move out inspections. So we know that you're doing the compliance side of inspections in terms of maybe your quarterly, your monthly inspections for interior, inspections for exterior of the building, and so forth and so on. But where I think that there's a little bit of a secret sauce here really comes down to the pre-move out inspections. And let me tell you why. Being compliant is important. Please don't downslide that. It is extremely important, but being proactive is key here. And the first and easiest way to do so is with pre-move out inspections. Now, think about it in terms of if you are a maintenance team member and you're going in apartments, let's say on a quarterly basis for inspections, and you're being proactive in terms of what needs to be replaced, checking those fire alarm systems, seeing if there's pets in there, what kind of damages are there. A very similar process, but helps in terms of what to look forward to before the resident moves out. And, you could do a pre-move out inspection within days after a resident turns in their notice to vacate. So whether they're having to give a 30-day notice or a 60 or 90-day notice, depending on your company policy, try to get into their apartment home within a week after providing that notice. That allows a couple of things to happen. First, your supplies for turns are going to be in stock on time because you're getting into that apartment and knowing what you need and having more time to order those items versus once the apartment is vacant and then you then are trying to order things in rush. Inside look at turnover timeline based on repairs needed. This is huge because if you're doing quick turnovers, there are companies that turn apartments in 24 hours. There's companies that do it in 3 to 5 days. And then there's companies that do 7 to 10 days. It really depends on your staffing, your cost, a lot of different variables and factors to consider here. But when you can develop a timeline, you can start to schedule your contractors to come in for what's needed to be done. Again, you go back to those supplies and what you need to order ahead of time. And you can communicate to your office team members in terms of more accuracy for a date of new move-in. Because how many times have you been in an apartment and said, okay, we can turn this in X amount of time once it's already vacant, and you start to communicate that to the leasing staff and they're doing their job right, they're leasing immediately. And then you have to go back and tell that prospective resident that's about to move in, hey, we actually have to push back your date by a couple days. That kind of stinks. Now, does that happen? Yes, we're not going to be able to control all of those things, but it's one way to kind of get ahead of the curve. And then you also have the ability to collect damages from residents prior to move out. There's the old saying that if you can't collect it while a resident is residing in the home, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be able to collect it after they move out. It's going to be that much more difficult. So with thinking about that, you're able to go in and to communicate to the resident, X, Y, and Z is going to need to be replaced in your home, whether that's appliances, carpet, blinds, anything that's past the normal wear and tear. And you're able to communicate that to them and tell them what that's going to cost, start talking about possible payment plans if they need that. And again, it just helps out with that communication process. So overall, pre-move out inspections are golden, especially once you have a process in place and do it very regularly. I'll tell you, I talked to a team a couple of weeks ago that they actually schedule theirs for every single Wednesday. Every Wednesday afternoon, anyone who has turned in the notice between the prior 7 days, it was really key for them to do it so that they're not having maintenance team members run all over the place or to do pre-move out inspections every day, since they have a lot of other things to do. Instead, they kind of schedule that block of time, and then they explain to residents, okay, we're going to be doing pre-move out inspections, 1 to 4 p.m. every Wednesday, for example. So you can kind of think outside the box there, and allows you a great opportunity to communicate. Terry, making sure your vendors are ready for your move outs and limits being caught off guard. Yes. And I want to mention, because this is so key. So thanks for saying that, Terry, because we're still in pandemic mode and there is a shortage of products and services and supplies out there, it is really important to be more timely now, more so than ever, because you don't want to be held up later because you're not able to get what you need in that timely fashion. So allowing your supplier partners additional time to be able to get what you need is going to be a win-win for everyone involved. Okay, number 3 here, turn efficiency. Okay, in a world where time is money, speed is definitely important, right? They always say time is money. I get it. But accuracy is equally as important to ensure resident satisfaction. Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. What do you mean exactly? Well, when you think about turn efficiency, there is a lot of variance from company to company in terms of, do you use contractors or do you have employees on your payroll that are full or part-time with your company that are doing the work in the turn? Now, there may be cases where you need to switch out because it doesn't make sense to necessarily do it a particular way, or there may be emergency situations, but for the most part, you want to have this set into place. Does it make more sense to have a contractor where you supply the parts and supplies for them? Let's say painting, for instance. Contractor comes in, you can get your paint in bulk from one of the NAA supplier partners, and you have this contractor come in and they paint the apartments on a turn basis and you pay them. Now, if you have an employee that's on payroll to do it, is that cheaper? Well, it kind of depends. What other things are happening at your property that you need that employee to do? You also have to calculate in, medical insurance benefits and things outside of just their standard salary. But if that employee kind of is having a slow time, maybe they're a groundskeeper and it's snowing outside, for an example, but they also paint, could they do it as well? So you kind of have to break that down, the cost perspective, as to what makes most sense. And in the day and time we live in, with resident satisfaction being such a high need, we have to think about, does it make more sense to have a contractor come in and do it so that your employee can focus on other things like finalizing the turnover once it's done for the apartment, taking care of work orders, meeting with residents for concerns, just making the property aesthetically pleasing and the best that it can be. So a lot to really consider and think about there. Team communication is going to be key here. You have some companies that want to use the whiteboards. That's more of an old school method, but I'll tell you, it works for a lot of properties, and especially those who do not have the funds for a sophisticated platform system where they could use technology to do it. If you have the ability to use technology, it makes greater sense because it's a great opportunity for everybody to not have to be physically present in, let's say, a maintenance shop to know where each apartment stands in the turn process. Has it been cleaned yet? Has it been walked yet? What appliances were replaced, so forth and so on. So team communication is going to be really, really key there. That kind of ties back before when we talked about the pre-move out inspections, being able to give a significant date that the apartment will be completely resident perfect for the leasing staff to have the new move in that day. So, and then standardized processes. Oftentimes you'll see, things like a 90-point inspection, 120-point inspection that you do with turnover. It's important to have something in place that allows a systematic approach for, if we have everything done in the turn of that apartment, what do we need to do as like a checks and balances to ensure that everything's correctly done and ready? And then of course, everything from scheduling really comes down to to standardizing processes. There's even really cool platforms now that allow you technology uses to schedule your contractors through that platform, which blows me away because I come from being on site and you had to call each individual contractor and set it up. And oftentimes we're finding there's some companies out there now that do a full turnover process. So you actually don't even have to worry about setting up individual contractors for their specialty. Instead, one company does it all. Now, I won't tell you which one to use because it's really going to depend on what makes sense for your property, what is what falls within your budget and makes sense for your culture. But a lot of options there, and that's really key. Terry, thank you so much for engaging in this conversation here. Maintenance first, painter second, cleaner third, carpet clean last in order. Love that. If you need to replace flooring, then you switch and do the cleaning after the flooring install. Listen, Terry, hello, Terry, I'm going to need you to share all these tips with everyone here. You've got it down pat, it says, and I love it. Even Chris confirms it here. Yep, you are on the way. So thanks for sharing that with us. Okay, service request. We see this a lot. It's something that happens every single day. Of course, it is a major part of maintenance for our business. One might say the bread and butter of what they need to do on a daily basis. So why does it matter in terms of NOI? Well, I think it's pretty obvious here. Service requests are necessary, and it determines a lot for our business outside of just resident satisfaction alone. So we're going to evaluate outdated processes. Yes, there are still companies out there that are writing manual service requests on paper, handing it to a maintenance professional or contractor to handle. You want to evaluate that a little bit. And I say that more from the liability standpoint, not just the admin time, because obviously if you're having to write things down and you're having to pass it along, there is definitely some overlap in time and not the best use of time. But outside of that, I always worry about the liability aspect of it. When a resident later questions or you need to go into litigation for an issue in a resident's home, which, that happens pretty regularly, you want to be able to have a systematic approach where you can pull out service requests. How many times did you enter that resident's apartment and what did you do when you were there? And what time did you get there? What time did you leave? All the specifications there. Being able to leverage technology for that is going to be a huge, huge plus. There's a lot of great programs that are going to allow you to use technology. Yardi Breeze, today's sponsor, is a great platform of that is very cost effective, especially for independent rental owners. So don't just think that if you can't afford, a huge platforming system, there are so many options out there that are going to give you great amount of processes that are very smooth, and that in the end, the resident is going to feel the positive effects of. Improve resident communication. Hello, that's key. When you have a system in place for service requests, you want to be checking in with the resident, because if Larry over here, our maintenance technician, is completing the service request to what he feels is satisfying, how does the resident themselves feel? It's really key here to be able to make sure that we are asking the resident that was everything fixed to your liking, to your desire, and so forth. And then analyze data for future improvement. So the great thing about when we leverage technology is we have the ability for reporting and data that we wouldn't necessarily have on a manual basis. And that allows us to make meaningful decisions moving forward. That allows us to decide how many staff members we need for maintenance, particularly for the service request. It allows us to find out what issues we're having in the home. So when we talk about CapEx projects or moving forward in budgeting season, it makes complete sense that we can say, okay, this particular model of this appliance, fridge, stove, whatever, continuously breaks. It breaks once it's outside of warranty. Once you can figure out those patterns, it allows you to then make different decisions, which then can tie back to your procurement strategy. Don't you love it? We're just going to weave in and out today, and everything kind of complements each other in terms of each decision that you make and how it ties back again to that big picture of NOI. All right, so now we're going to invest in efficiency. Now, this is a tricky one, okay? Very tricky. Thanks so much, Megan. Yeah, it's tricky here because oftentimes when we talk about efficiency, I can see owners or management companies cringe a little bit because they want to do those things, but they say, okay, we have a cash flow problem at our asset. Are we able to really do these things that we want to do? if we don't have the funds to do them, or if we're basically making ends meet, but nothing more than that. So kind of think about that. So I want to just tell you, that efficiency is important. Again, we're going to go back to that big picture, because you can't just think about the nickel and diming and what you're spending right that very moment, but you have to think about the longevity of it, what it does for your property, what it does for your team, what it does for your marketability for your property, and so forth. This was great. This was from a recent NAA survey that 45% of respondents stated they are open to requesting energy efficient improvements at properties where they live. This is residents. They are open to requesting improvements at the properties where they live. They want them. And in fact, you'll find that residents and potential residents will even pay an upgraded fee for that you can start to recoup some of those costs there. So, we could dig into this big time, right? We've already said that, but I think just some key items here to think about: evaluate your products. That's going to tie back into the data we talked about when we're leveraging technology. Think about exactly what it is that we're using. Is it the best? Does it make sense? Is there an ROI on it, the cost perspective, and break that down. Upgrading utilities, that's important. Whether your residents are paying their utilities or you're paying them as a property or even recouping a portion of that, that's going to differ per property. But at the end of the day, we need to take care of our environment. And we also have to think about the things that we're doing at our properties, whether we're fully going green or not, because, that's a gray area. But there are things that you can do even on a limited budget without having to be fully green, but that you're still taking care of the environment and lowering the cost for the resident and or the property owner at the same time. Energy efficient appliance, that's a key. When you talk about a microwave, a stove, a dishwasher, if you have those, and of course a fridge, those are big time where you can save money. Anything that you can put on your home in terms of water flow and to prevent so much water flow from happening at a time, to cut down on water bills. Do residents remove those? Of course they do sometimes, I know, so don't kill the messenger here. But that's kind of the thought process I want you to have, is what can you implement at your property that ultimately saves money, but also takes care of the environment. And then smart home features. So we're seeing smart homes everywhere in terms of, you've got these really cool ones that even for single family homes that we see that are in some of the big Homeorama shows. And then of course, apartments as well. They're getting fancier and more technology that, when you think about the cartoon, The Jetsons, we think about, wow, that could really be us. Maybe not the car portion, but in terms of like what, talking to your home and having it know what you're doing in the whole box idea, it's kind of there. I mean, I love in my home that I can control the thermostat from my phone. Alexa from Amazon, she is going to, cut my lights on and off, my ceiling fan on and off. There's so many cool things that can happen. And the fact that we're investing in those for our apartments is really, really huge. All right, that was my timer, so we're getting close. So where to start? Those were your top 5 things that I wanted you to do. Top 5 that we needed to think about in terms of driving that NOI. But now you're thinking, Stephanie, what are we going to do right now? I've got to go back to my property or my company, and I need to think about this in micro chunks. Okay, so we're not going to have the big dinner of NOI yet. We need to just have these little snacks. Okay, I'm here to help you. These are the 3 things we're going to do. These are ideas for immediate implementation. Number 1, clearly define emergency situations. Okay, I know it sounds so trivial and so small, but I cannot tell you how many companies have not specifically outlined in their company policies what an emergency situation is for a property. This is huge, okay? So that means that there should not be any gray areas in terms of if your AC is broken, but it's 38 degrees outside. No, that's not an emergency. You don't need AC when it's 38 degrees, or vice versa if it's heat. Think about that. If you have more than one toilet and your toilet breaks, well, that's not necessarily an emergency as long as you have one or more working toilets in your home, and we can address it in the very next morning. Now, don't confuse that with customer service. If you're really trying to go that extra mile and you have higher rents, sometimes that's going to be a different, but that's where you have to outline it in your company policy. You have to be very specific. So that way, when your maintenance technician is getting a call that says the resident is upset because X, Y, and Z isn't working, don't put that employee in a position where they have to think, oh, is it not? I need to call my boss. No, it's, provide this policy not only to the employees, but to your residents as well, so that they have a clear expectation of what is an after hours emergency and what isn't. Okay. So now you're going to cut down on payroll because you don't need to have so much overtime, and, because people aren't coming out. And you also don't have to worry about doing things after hours that would call in contractors unless it is a dire emergency, because we know that after hours, we pay a lot more money for those contractors. Number two, we're going to train maintenance team members on financial statements. I'm going to say this again. Train maintenance team members on financial statements. Now, I'm a huge proponent here that all team members, no matter their level, should be trained on financial statements. But because today's conversation is about maintenance and driving NOI, you need to explain why your housekeeper, your porter, your maintenance technicians, your painter, your maintenance supervisor, all of them, they have to know that every little thing they do, from picking up trash to waving at a resident to turning an apartment, everything that they do ties back to the bottom line of that property. And you have to explain to them what that looks like. If they want to order too many parts because it's more comfortable for them to have it in, explain what that looks like on your financial statement. And, it's a great time to even really dig deeper if you pay any type of bonuses for NOI. It allows you to really use that as a training feature. But I'm telling you, dig in deep, because employees don't know what they don't know. And so oftentimes people think, well, I'm not a manager or a leader situation. I really need the opportunity to know what I'm doing and the significance of why it matters to the big picture. And then number three, final thing for immediate implementation, take care of your team. Come on. It's, we're still in this pandemic, which is obviously crazy times we're living in. But at the end of the day, when you take care of your team, that produces happy employees. And guess what? Happy employees yield better results. That means happy owners. That means happy residents. That means happy employees. And that means more money in the bank for them. So take care of them, pay them well, make sure that they get, adequate PTO time, make sure they have a good work-life balance, and making sure that you're giving them the support that they need more so now than ever. And this may seem so insignificant when you think about, well, how does that drive my bottom line? It is difficult sometimes to put in a direct ROI back on something like taking care of your teams. But guess what? When you have turnover for your employees, that costs significant amount for training and hiring and so forth. You also, what I love here is when you have employees for maintenance that have longevity with a property or company, you get historical data that is far more important and relevant than any data you could have in leveraging technology. And so take care of them so that they stay long-term and that they continue to be a huge asset to your property. Okay, so we went over a little bit on our time, but I promise you it was well worth it in the end. Terry, you're right. Fire, flood, or blood. Love that saying. Learned that probably my first couple months in the business, and it could not be more true. Okay, so quickly, I don't know if we want to open it up to any questions. I'm also going to turn it back over to Linda, and the floor is all yours, my friend.
Great. Wow. What great information, Stephanie, in such a short period of time. This was fabulous. Right now, we don't have any questions in the Q&A, and I didn't see anything else come up in the chat. So if anybody has anything, if you could go ahead and put that up real quick. I think, Stephanie, you wanted to provide your information.
Absolutely. So right there on my screen, the QR code, you can quickly connect with me right on my LinkedIn. It gives you the ability to ask me any questions, read any of the maintenance or other thought leadership topics that I share regularly. And then, of course, you've also got my email right there on my business card. So should you not be able to ask any questions today, since we're limited on time, I am always happy to continue the conversation.
Great. No other questions have come in. So I would like to once again thank you, Stephanie, for being with us today. We really do appreciate it. What great information. And then also Chris with Yardy Breeze and their sponsorship, and every one of you that were on the webinar today. We really appreciate you being here. And again, it will be recorded and up on the website and YouTube channel next week. Thank you again and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.